Welcome to the new Overlords Podcast. I'm Max, and this is a video game show where I'm joined every week by someone who is literally off the charts. It's Sema. Hello there, Sema.
Hey, wait, is that a clue? Are we going to be looking at charts today?
We are going to be looking at charts. Steam charts is one thing we're going to be looking at, and pretty much the only thing we're going to be looking at, only because that's kind of the only chart that really exists.
It's so easily accessible compared to any other way of reporting on video games or learning about their numbers.
Right. Publicly traded companies will tell you overall like segment revenue or company revenue, but they'll very rarely anymore these days talk about individual game player counts because it's volatile. It's a volatile industry and those numbers go up and down. So it's very difficult to get on a call with investors and say, you know, yeah, we're half the players that we were last month. Sell. But we're always half the players in February because we have an update in March, and then we'll be twice the players. You can't. It's very hard to explain that.
People don't know how to interpret the numbers, including
everybody who makes videos on YouTube. Well, not that they don't know, but they purposefully misinterpret numbers in order to have content. So if Steam charts is the only hammer, they're going to ring every bell that they can with that hammer. Is that a phrase? I typed that up earlier. Ring the bell. Because you can do things like, well, at launch, there was 100,000 concurrent players for Final Fantasy XIV, and now there's only 15,000 players. So if you draw a line between 115, in 2 months, there will be 0 players. This game is dead. It's dead. It's dead, I tell you. But it's not. None of the games that we're going to talk about are dead, and we're going to talk about a bunch of MMOs today. So that's going to be really fun. And it'll probably be the first in a series of episodes about this, potentially 3 or 4, but at least 2, because there are a lot of MMOs. There are MMOs in development. There are indie MMOs. There are MMO likes and MMO lights. We're going to talk about our top, sort of like our favorite 4 or 5 today, just like sort of the top traditional MMOs, Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft, that kind of thing. But there's too many for us I didn't want this to be a 10-hour podcast. So we would probably break it up into multiple shows, which will be a fun thing to do. So if this is our first one, we may be lying and there may be no more of the episodes, but if you're watching this 2 months from now, you may have other additional episodes to just go to next to hear the rest.
Are you saying we might be lying liars who lie?
Well, we are lying liars who lie, but I'm just saying this might be one of the things we're lying about, but maybe not. Who knows?
You'll never know because we won't tell you.
Right. No, we can't tell you which are the lies. That would spoil it. And we have to surprise you with the lies. But first, we could talk about the news, which is hopefully not also full of lies.
Good news, everyone!
As we like to do in our news, because I'm playing it a lot still, is talk a little bit about Dune Awakening, which did have some significant news. So they're early in their release cycle for Dune Awakening, and Funcom is doing a lot of work. So it's only been out about 4 weeks now, and they've had multiple updates, both gameplay updates. They've had bug fixes and patches. They're trying to be really responsive. So anybody who's out there saying 4 weeks into the launch of a major game like this, these guys, they're so unresponsive. They're not. They can't like be 24 hours a day on the stream chatting with you as an individual. They are pumping out patch notes. Their community leads are out there in Discord. They're actually doing quite a bit. So props to them on that. They did get a -1 to their props count this past week because while they put out another update that fixed some things that everybody was hoping that they would fix and tweaked some things that they are hoping are going to tune up more of the game. If you've been listening to us, there's that PvE versus PvP. There's more of that's going on that they're trying to tune up. I don't think it actually changed very much. Some of the things that they changed in terms of making it better for the PvE loot in the deep desert. I was in there this week after this update, and it it still feels pretty empty for PvE players in the south half of the deep desert. The problem that they had, though, was one of the things that you're able to do is any bases that are in a PvP zone in the deep desert, which was the whole north half of the deep desert and a couple small pockets. Any bases that are in there, they have this weird little mechanic that when a sandstorm comes through, which comes, they're random, and it's about, once every 45 minutes, maybe, one will sweep through a third of the deep desert. And they happen in Haga Basin too. But if a sandstorm sweeps through the deep desert and your base is in a PvP area, it will shut down the shields of your base, which makes your base damageable for about 5 minutes after this random timed sandstorm blows through. Well, one of the things that they accidentally did with these tweaks that they were making is in the south half of the desert, that's PvE areas, there are these capture points. And the capture points are so that you're kind of like a king of the hill, and it gives you points towards the Lancerad, which is sort of like a personal and guild and faction challenge weekly objectives. So you capture the capture point, you hold it, but it's a little PvP area, right? Well, they moved one of those. And they moved one of those to this space where a bunch of PvE bases were set up, like a lot of them, on all of the servers. It's the same for every server. And what happened then was those bases became vulnerable, and then people who just love to wreak havoc said, oh, great, now these are suddenly vulnerable. We're going to destroy all these bases the next time a sandstorm comes through and steal all their stuff. And they did. So there was a bunch of people, this wasn't supposed to happen. Their bases became vulnerable. They lost a lot of stuff. They got a bunch of their stuff destroyed. And it was unintended, and it was really bad. And it felt really bad for those players. Well, Funcom has circled back around. It took them some time to come up with a response, and they did say, we're going to be doing reimbursements for the people that lost stuff. It was our bad. We didn't mean for it to happen that way. We're going to fix things, and we're going to give you some reimbursements. They even added a little system to give you reimbursements.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. But tough thing when you're implementing fixes rapidly is to ensure that those fixes don't have unintended consequences. So that's why there's this balance between fixes coming rapidly and then the players saying, oh, you're really responsive, and the fixes coming too rapidly so you don't have a lot of time to test them and put them on the test servers and play them and practice the rollouts and make sure there aren't any unintended consequences. So
make sure you're not unrolling something.
Right. Yeah. So I didn't get anything lost for my bases. My one base in the deep desert, which is in the PvE area. And if I had, I don't have very much stuff anyway. I'm not doing a ton in the game right now these days. So I wouldn't have minded all that much. But some people had like big guild bases out there and lots of material, like everything they worked on for the week, all kind of wiped out, which wasn't great. Also, the only other major news item we have in the week that caught my attention because it was building and building, we're on this topic of exploits and cheating, is apparently Star Citizen has gotten themselves into a situation where, even though it's not really even a released game, but the cheating in Star Citizen became bad enough that there was enough of a player outcry that they decided to respond. So duping was one problem. Duping in any game is where you use a glitch to duplicate some item or loot or armor or bug or something. So that's one thing. There was even a little bit of that in Dune. There's been that in kind of like every game. It's something you have to be really careful of as a multiplayer game developer. But the other thing was just widespread hacks. So like these hacks where you use like these hacking tools or these hacking scripts where you walk up to somebody in game and take their armor off of them that they're currently wearing and like strip them naked while you're standing there and steal all their armor.
Dang.
And so there's like all of these like videos, and they're like using teleports, so they're like running around super fast. They run up next to somebody, and just and you can just see their characters just standing there. The two characters like standing next to each other, but you could see like the armor just like blinking off of the player while they're trying to get away.
That's crazy.
In a rare move, Robert Space Industries, which is the developer that's making Star Citizen, also said, "Hey, we get it. This is risen to the level of basically for them to respond. They are going to be doing bans, or even already did some. It is against the terms. They're in a weird place. Also,
it was kind of a this is why we can't have nice things post.
Yes,
because he says, we've been happy to have players do add-ons essentially because for localization and for other good things, but now that some people have misused that, we're going to have to crack down on it.
Right. And this is one of those examples of why we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
Now, they're still in a weird spot because it's an unreleased game, and the things that are getting stolen aren't real things yet. But it's going to be unreleased for another decade as well. So this is like the game that people play.
This is the game that people play, and also for the ones who are playing it and have invested thousands of their real life dollars, it's one of their passions. So I feel for them. They don't want their passion universe messed with by these people.
Right. Nobody wants cheaters. Don't cheat. Don't be cheating.
Is it? I bet it's not other passionate Star Citizen people. It's people who, like they said in the article, who it's grown enough to be, a good enough target for people who do that in all the, who that's their business.
Right. Just the bad actors that are out there.
Their business
get their kicks doing this.
Or that's how they make their living, is they run exploits in games and
which is that's practically an industry in and of itself. So that's not a lot of game news this week. That's about it. Just wanted to hit on those two things. I did want to go through, as we have been going through our coming soon. I did add one more thing to the coming soon because it's coming out tomorrow, and it's a topic that we've touched on in the past. In our Behind the Games podcast, we did an interview with one of the research leads for The Sims, and The Sims 4 has another update coming out tomorrow. It is fairies. Fairy people, fairyland.
Fairyland, yeah. It looks very complete to me. I mean, I'm looking at everything that comes out about The Sims. I look at it with my very unsim informed eyes, but it looks like it's got a lot to it to me.
Right. They do not hold back in the level of content and amount of professionalism, amount of polish. That's the word I was looking for. Amount of polish that they put into anything that they put into Sims. They've gotten very good at it over the course of the last, how Sims 4 has been out, like a decade now. It's a huge thing. It's, I think, great for people that love Sims that they continue to do this. It's also great for The Sims because it's created a $1 billion industry just around The Sims over the course of the 10 years. It's just amazing the amount of revenue that they're able to continue to bring in by creating the game as a platform for additional content updates, all optional, that you can get, like Fairyland. So this is Fairyland. It's out there.
It seems like good timing to me too, because like everyone who was super interested in Enzoi a month or so ago, or how long has it been? 2 months, when it was the hot new thing, that has sort of the bloom is gone from that, and they're like maybe ready to go back to The Sims for a while.
Right. We had debated if Enzoi was going to be the hot new thing and like take over potentially. And it's not like things need to one thing doesn't need to die for another thing to be successful. So let's be clear about that. Nobody wants the next WoW. That's the other kind of thing everybody's looking for. So what is the next Sims? It could be another Sims.
Yeah. That is definitely how they used to call new games. They would say, this is the newest WoW killer. But that's
killer.
Old-timey thing. Yeah.
Right. So not that we wanted Enzoi to be the Sims killer, but was Inzoi going to be another Sims? And so far, it still could. It's early in its life cycle, but it's definitely the shine's kind of worn off. A lot of players had a lot of really fun playing it, but the kind of like ran out of content, and they don't have the dozens and dozens of content updates that The Sims has.
The decades to fall back on of development. Yeah.
Right. So we'll continue to watch that, but yeah, so that Sims is a thing. It is quite a thing. And then just to reiterate, because we keep saying it in the past weeks, not a lot of updates coming out in July, but the big ones that we have our eye on are Shadow Labyrinth, which is that Pac-Man platformer side-scroller coming out on July 18th. Wildgate by Dreamhaven, multi-team Overwatch and Spacey kind of thing coming out on July 22nd. Grounded and Tales of the Shire, Grounded 2 and Tales of the Shire, both coming out on July 29th. Both of those are kind of in my wheelhouse in terms of survival-y adventure kind of games. So I probably will be playing both of those in particular. So cool. All right. This podcast is brought to you by all of you out there. Thank you, everyone, for watching, listening. We didn't have a lot of people that watched or watched last week. A lot of people listened. All the same number of people listened. But with the 4th of July weekend, things got a little weird. But we really appreciate everybody who's out there. Number one thing, if you want to support us, is tell other people to come watch and listen, because that's how we work, all by word of mouth. But we do appreciate that, and we appreciate everybody in the live stream, which is Wednesday afternoons. We did have a little bit of technical details, technical problems in the pre-show, but we got over that pretty quick, didn't we, Sema?
Yes.
Well, kind of quick.
You did.
Kind of bashed things around. Percussive maintenance, that's where you hit things with a hammer, and it's all working. This podcast is also brought to you by LAACT-S, AIE-Guild.org. We got our big end of July, beginning of August summer events in AIE across all of the games that we play. Check in there, AIE-Guild.org. You can jump in our Discord. That's the gaming community that Sema and I are a part of and play with. You can also come join us on newoverlords.com. We've got our Discord where we talk about this show and the games that we're sort of like crossover playing. Dune Awakening is a big one. We've got, a growing number of people. We're playing Dune and Ark Survival Evolved in particular are the kind of two games that the New Overlords community is continuing to play right now. And then it's also brought to you by Garden and a Goat, the game that I'm currently working on with my studio team. A little bit more news is going to be coming out on the social feeds for Garden and a Goat and on our Discord for the game this week, just showing off a couple of the bullet points of what we've got going into the game for Alpha 2. So enough of that. All right, Sema.
It looks like meat's back on our menu, boys.
No way. God. Finally.
I kind of like the mango bread.
What kind of meat would that be, Max?
Meat on the menu, MMO meat.
Oh, right.
It's MMOs used to be kind of our bread and butter.
Yes,
and
that's true.
It used to be
And
the
now
only kind of
They
game
are
I would
also
play.
our meat.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Now you also play survival games.
I play survival. I play single player games. I play more games, more diversity of different kinds of games. I played The Sims while we were doing that interview.
True. That is true.
But back in the day, so say go back 8 years ago, 9, 10 years ago, I only played MMOs. I wouldn't play anything else. And I played all of them after. So I played only Star Wars: The Old Republic for a while. I played only WoW before that. And then a couple years after Star Wars, and in between there was a break where I was playing a lot of EVE even before Star Wars launched. But then I branched out and played all of the MMOs, sometimes all at the same time. Now I play tons and tons of games. I just like sort of seeing and exploring and experiencing all of the games that are out there. But getting back to our roots with the MMOs, there are tons of MMOs out there. If you look at XYZ MMO, you search for, how is Final Fantasy doing these days? The top hits that you will get for every single MMO is this MMO is dead. And they're not.
No, by far.
I wanted to take a look at, and Sema and I play a bunch of these, so we know some of them from the inside and some of them from the outside because I haven't played them in a while or checked in. What are they looking like? Where are they at? What do the roadmaps look like? So I thought what we could do, Sema, is assemble an atlas of roadmaps. How do you like that? So this is our MMO atlas of all the different roadmaps we're going to stitch together.
Yes. Yes, I like it.
We're going to start this week with the top 5 or so of the main MMOs that are kind of like the bigger traditional top MMOs, traditional MMOs, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, Guild Wars 2. So if you look at this Steam chart with Rust as the top MMO out there, yeah, Rust is kind of an MMO, but it's not the kind of traditional MMO that we're talking about. So we're going to start with those, but we will go through potentially in future weeks, as we said in the pre-show, we may be lying to you, or at the start of the show, we may be lying to you and never get around to it. But I've got notes here on categories of MMOs outside of this first set, like some of the second tiers, some of the indie MMOs that are currently released, some of the MMOs that are still out there like Throne and Liberty and Lost Ark, and how are those ones doing? Black Desert Online, which I played for a while, but I'm not playing right now, as we may do an episode on those. Some of the old school MMOs that still exist, Ultima Online, Rift, EverQuest, those are still out there and people still play them. Big populations of people. So we may talk about those on an episode. And then the crossover ones, Rust, Dune. Look, Dune Awakening is second on this Steam list right now as concurrent users. Dune Awakening is MMO-ish. Palia is MMO-ish. Once Human is MMO-ish. Fallout 76. And then finally, the ones that are in development. We probably will definitely do a show on the ones that are in development because I'm excited about some of the new things coming. We don't know if these will rise to the level of a big regular MMO or some of it if they'll ever come out. Star Citizen is an example.
Right.
Ashes of Creation. Chrono Odyssey, everybody's talking about right now. And is it going to live up to what their vision is for release or not? So we will probably get to those at some point as well. But yeah, let's start. One of the ones that we're not going to go over today, because we just did an episode 2 episodes ago, so look that up, is World of Warcraft. But let's talk about it for just a second, Sema, now that we're not going to talk about it. I think World of Warcraft is still top of the list. It's, A1, number 1 of the traditional MMOs. And in some ways, as we talked about, I think they're kind of like still at the top of their game in terms of creating content. And
Right. So you might have games where you prefer the combat or prefer the raid fights or prefer the story. But WoW is still on a cadence where you get 2 or 3 new big content drops every year and more in some years. And by big content drops, I mean new dungeon, new raid, sometimes a new class. I mean, yes.
story.
Growth in general. Yeah, story.
They have a roadmap of these series of expansions that are going to be coming out over the next 3, 4, 5 years. And it's solid. It's solid content. It's story. It's people that the community is very, very excited about what's coming for World of Warcraft still. They're adding housing to the game, so major features. They continue to do refresh and reskin and remaster of the graphics. It's solid, and it's one of the best in class of all time. You can't deny it. So World of Warcraft. Right. World of Warcraft still exists. So they released this. This was like spoilery content. This is Xalatath and the Locust Walker. I guess Unexpected Alliance, the video is out, teasing what's coming in the future in the next pre-update before the next expansion, which is coming in winter timeframe with a midnight.
Well, the Ethereals have something she wants, so we'll see how that. If that leads to a partnership or a death battle.
Yes, we shall see. So there's that. There's WoW. Next up, I did want to talk about because it's This one's kind of on the bubble in terms of it's not definitely not as big as it used to be, but it's very solid. You were looking at the numbers. What did you see as the concurrent players just on Steam, which isn't even the main way to launch the game for Star Wars: The Old Republic?
At the moment I looked, it was like something like 5,067 with like a 24-hour peak of 6,000 something. So around that.
So Star Wars: The Old Republic is still if you look in any of the lists of top traditional MMOs, it's always in the list, which is great.
I mean,
it's good to see.
That is definitely enough playership for them to keep going, and that's what we want.
And Steam is not the main way that, or never used to be the main way that people launch the game.
Yeah, it's definitely not the only way. You can, because yes, they have their own launcher, and a lot of people don't play through Steam.
And up until about 2 years ago, that you couldn't even it wasn't on Steam.
Right. And MMO players don't adopt new things gracefully, so I'm guessing there's a lot of people out there that never took the step to Steam.
Yeah, they do. You're right. MMO players do not adopt, do not like anything new. However, they will also lament that there's nothing new in the game.
Right, true.
Which
you got us pegged.
That is definitely true. Anyway, we got a executive producer letter on June 27th. So this came about 2 weeks ago now. So Keith Koenig, it's all run by Broadsword now. It's still EA as the publisher, and because they're under EA as the publisher, they were beholden to the contracts that EA had in the industry, which included voice actor contracts. So we've been in this situation with Star Wars: The Old Republic for about the last year, a little over a year now, where the story content that they've had queued up and written and ready to go out couldn't, because they have a large cast of voice actors. And that's one of the key elements that make Star Wars: The Old Republic what it is the first-class voice acting and the cinematic story that's told through the game. And I continue to believe it's some of the best in class of the traditional MMOs in terms of those cinematic stories that was built into the engine from the ground up. And I think they even do their in-game cinematics better than World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft does their cutscene produced cinematics brilliantly. I mean, you can't deny that. And when they do one of their blur level trailers, they should be making movies in Hollywood. But
I agree.
Star Wars: The Old Republic, the in-game, in-scene cinematics are just some of the best. Now, they haven't been able to do that, but the voice actor strike is over. So most of this producer letter, it talks about what's been happening the last 6 months since the beginning of the year.
And in fact, I mean, it even said the producer's letter, I missed this before, but it even said to talk about how we got to today. It's always been mostly about let us tell you about the last quarter.
Yes.
But with a little blurb at the end that's a teaser for the future. I always felt like the main reason to read it was to find out something new, and I don't think so. I think the main thing is definitely to get a rundown of the last quarter.
Oh, geez, Forster.
What?
Forster in the chat room says it was July 2020 was the Steam release. So what did I say 2 years ago? It went out.
Oh my God. It was 5 years ago.
Don't ask us about don't ask about time. Don't ask me to estimate time. I live outside of time, so your linear time that you humans experience that baffles me. So
I was going to say it was 5 years. I totally was.
But you are a time walker, then you understand time in ways that I do not, apparently.
And I'm not a lying liar of lies.
A lying liar who lies. I was totally, that's the ticket. 5 years. That's what I was going to say. I agree. This is the way we typically see these. I wish what we really care about, we always just scroll to the bottom. So fine, we scrolled to the bottom. What we found in the bottom is what we expected. They have multiple bits of story, galactic threads and Master's Enigma that they will be talking about soon, and now they can unleash their recording studio
Yeah, so what we kind of have is a back supply, right? Like we've had those releases, but without the story, and those names go with the releases, and so some of them we've had the release already, but they need to finish and then publish the story part. So I'm foreseeing that we'll have that on some sort of accelerated rate, and by accelerated I mean shorter than a normal like season.
I would hope. Yeah, I
So
would
that they'll
hope.
eventually, so they'll be, catching up.
Quarterly updates is how Star Wars: The Old Republic currently releases content, and it's major and minor updates. So 2 major updates, which are usually where the story comes, and then 2 quote unquote minor updates where the season's transition. We get the new like season pass kind of content. We get new features. We get small story bits, but not the major story updates. I would hope we wouldn't have to wait another year to get the 2 major story beats out of the major quarterly updates to catch up with what we've already had. See,
I
you're
would be
right.
surprised. Yeah, I would be surprised if that happens because they don't have to do all the other stuff that's not story in those releases because they already did that
Right.
and we already played it.
Now, so here we go. Is Star Wars: The Old Republic alive? Yes, of course it's alive. It's a major MMO and it's continuing to do well. The Broadsword team, which now runs software development for Star Wars: The Old Republic, is still that same old team that's been doing this for some of them since the very beginning. And they do quarterly updates, and they've gotten very good at continuing to maintain that cadence, except for these story bits that were obviously constrained by the industry issues. But they're continuing to do graphical updates. They're continuing to do feature updates, add new things to the game. And now hopefully we'll be catching up with story as well. It's alive. It's one another, on what? So now we've got WoW and Star Wars: The Old Republic, major MMOs that are still alive. Good for us. Good for you. You did it, Star Wars: The Old Republic.
I mean, MMOs in general are still kicking. Like a lot of people consider a classic regular MMO as an old style of gaming.
Right.
But they thrive, the big ones.
But it's still thousands of concurrent users on all of these MMOs we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Daily.
And some of them are as old as WoW or older. Like, isn't RuneScape? Yeah, RuneScape's been around forever, as long as WoW,
Right.
if not a little. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Next, when was the last time, and we have played it even together, but when was the last time you played Guild Wars 2, Sema?
I played it for a couple of days, probably in the last 18 months, because we did it with our raid team.
Oh, right.
Our WoW raid team. Yeah, as a fun night.
Popped over there and...
Yeah. And guess what my biggest issue was?
What's that?
Inventory.
Inventory. So did you play with characters that you already had, or did people have to roll new characters?
No, we played because you can. We did these events where you can be sort of any level, so we just characters that we already had.
Which Guild Wars 2 is still very good at.
Right.
Is players of all levels, because each of the zones is scaled to whatever level you happen to be, and people of varying levels can all then play together, and it's balanced pretty well that way. You don't get those weird situations where I'm max level, but I go to some weird zone where a level 10 is twice as powerful as me, and the mobs are all killing me. They're balanced pretty well and across all those zones.
That's WoW. That's how WoW does.
Right, and some of Star Wars Old Republic, most of it you're overpowered, but you do get those weird glitches where you go to some zone, because they do level sync as well. Yeah.
It's not like WoW though. There are cases in WoW where, like, if you're in a dungeon group and there's a level 10 and everyone else is level 80, the level 10 does like 4 times the damage.
Yeah, WoW scaling is extreme too.
Or like, we hope we get a level 10. This will be real quick if we get a level 10.
Right, exactly. It's almost like you should roll another character just to have it on standby, or have
People
characters
do.
at all the different levels.
People do, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think so I tried to look at the roadmap. I think Guild Wars is continuing on a steady pace of what they do. So they have sort of like these chapters of stories. Janthier Wilds is this current story that they've been telling for a little while now. They continue to release new chapters, which tell a little bit more of the story. And they continue to release additional content around that. Like in this latest update, they for Janthier Wilds, they added another zone that you could go and do stuff in with another world bosses. The world bosses are a big deal in Guild Wars 2 and really, really cool big group content, and a fractal and little quality of life updates. And then they pushed out a roadmap. So they've got their roadmap, which goes through summer and talks about continuing events that they're going to continue to support. Of the MMOs that we're going to talk about today, I think this one seemed to have about the most sedate level of updates and excitement around their roadmap, but it was very consistent. And it continues to be one of those MMOs that the people that like it continue to like it very much. If you go to like mmorpg.com or org, whatever that website is, and you look at the player rankings on traditional MMOs, Guild Wars 2 filters to the top quite often as one of the most liked MMOs. So that's good. So I think they're continuing to do well with Guild Wars 2. And because you can get in there, it's also a good one that you can just get in there and play the content at no matter what level you are or what you were doing. You might have forgotten how to play your character, but as soon as you sort of like remember, you can play the most current stuff. You can go back and play old stuff. You can check off things in your chapter log for old story and go do that again. You might have to catch up and like unlock your new mount or something if you never did the mounts originally. There's a little bit of that kind of thing, but not a lot. As opposed to this next game that we're going to talk about, where you can't just jump in and play. You need to go back in time and play years and years of content to catch up. Final Fantasy. So Final Fantasy is in an interesting state. It's a major MMO. It's one of the top played MMOs. It's well loved by the players who play it, but it also has a lot of people putting out videos and articles right now saying Final Fantasy is dying. And it's one of those weird situations where, again, they're drawing the graph of, well, when Dawn Trail first released, it had this many players, and now it has this many players. And if you draw a straight line between those 2 points, it will have 0 players in 2 months. Final Fantasy is dead. That's not how things work, for one. For two, it seems like the traditional player base for Final Fantasy just isn't all that happy with the current Dawn Trail story. So that puts them in a weird position where because story is such a big part of Final Fantasy, all of Final Fantasy content in all its flavors, including Final Fantasy XIV, the online MMO, but all the Final Fantasies over time, it's very story. Everybody plays it for the story. And they've had very, very strong stories in the Final Fantasy XIV MMO in the last couple expansions that people have really liked. Those stories kind of came to a conclusion in Endwalker. So the last kind of like 3 expansions over the last, I was going to say last few years, probably 8 years. I don't know, 8 years, 10 years, however long those have been going, drove themselves to a point where they were done telling that arc over the course of the last 8 years. So they needed a reset.
They're starting a new arc, and that's going to have less following,
and
just by definition,
right,
as it builds.
Right, and have a breather period in between. So the start of Dawn Trail was definitely like not much was happening. Not much was happening. They kind of went on a vacation. They went to an island and just had a little fun for a while. And so you didn't have this giant epic arc of story that had built up over years. And they also went in a direction with some of the new characters, and your character was no longer the reason for the game. You were the Dawn, you're the you're the Edgewalker, you're the champion of the world. It kind of pivoted to where it was a story about a new character. And they were trying to set this up where you're going to follow this new character. It's going to be their story. And players kind of didn't like that, or kind of like don't like that right now. And they don't like this new character as much in some players. So that seems to be, if you ask like people why they think Final Fantasy isn't doing that well, those are some of the reasons that people will talk about.
So so the two games I play a lot of, Star Wars: The Old Republic and WoW. In Star Wars: The Old Republic, you are the hero. You're the Outlander, the whatever. In WoW, you are not the hero. You are. I mean, you do things, but it's Jaina Proudmoore and Thrall and those guys.
Right.
Are the heroes. In LOTRO, in a Lord of the Rings Online, you may see Frodo or Aragorn, but you're not them. You don't play as them.
You're not even in their party.
Right. You're not even in their party. Right. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about. It's like, which would you rather be, the hero in every story, or do you prefer like the potential for variety you can get if somebody else is a hero and you're participating in that battle?
And I think different players will give different answers, and maybe give different answers at different times.
Right. Especially like in the case of Final Fantasy XIV, where they're used to a certain way.
Right. Again, if you change things, don't change anything, but I need more
variety.
Need more variety and content. You need to add things to the game and keep it new and fresh, but don't dare change anything.
By more, I mean I want more cheese.
Right. So yes, that change seemed to put some people off, but their plan is that this is a new 10-year arc of content, and as such, they've got time. So let's.
It sounds to me too like it's a good time to start Final Fantasy. Like if you found it intimidating to start Final Fantasy XIV because you would have had to keep, make up hours of story.
Except that gets to my frustration that I started this Final Fantasy part of this segment with, which is you can't. If you wanted to get in here and start Dawn Trail, either you have to pay $25 extra dollars to skip up to Dawn Trail to start Dawn Trail, or you have to play all of the 10 years of content that have come before.
Huh. That's a weird decision to me, because like if you're completely new to Final Fantasy XIV, how would you decide whether the $25 was worth it?
Right. I don't know. And it's weird that I'm going to like get into a game, pay the subscription, install Final Fantasy, and pay extra money to not play the game.
Right.
I get to pay you extra money yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like character boosts, though. Like they all have character boosts, which also is like paying money to skip.
That's a separate $25.
Well, yes. Yes.
It is. So job boost to boost your level and, give you the skills. That's a separate $25. You don't even get that.
I'm just saying there is a tradition of charging players to skip playing.
In Star Wars: The Old Republic, you wouldn't have to pay to skip, and you can go back and play that older content. In Guild Wars, it's kind of like a big chapter list. You can pick things and go back and forth.
To be clear, you can pay to skip. You don't have to pay to skip the story, but if you want to have a level 70 character.
Yeah. So I'm just talking about the story skips now. The leveling up, the pay to get a higher level character or a level boost. You could do that in WoW too, but you don't have to pay extra in WoW to
skip the story.
Skip the story. Yeah.
It does feel weird.
Yes. So that's every time I see something in Final Fantasy, or I think of like going back to Final Fantasy to jump back in, I get frustrated. So like here on the screen, there's this, it looks cooler than it is, unfortunately. But for some, I saw clips of this when I'm researching sort of what's the latest in Final Fantasy. You get to go to the moon, so Earth's moon, and go into this moon base And like, see how they show like this moon base is like getting built out and you're like mining resources. I'm like, so is this like a survival, like base, crafting building on the moon in space in Final Fantasy? I want to do this. Well, for one, no, it's not what it looks like, unfortunately. You do go to the moon, but everyone goes there. You're not building the base. It kind of like builds itself up with the community. You do like a couple mini games to level up your crafting skills. So it's like a gathering crafting mini game zone to build up your crafting skills. So
Right.
For one. For two, though, I thought it was this cool, I get to go into space and do play a survival game inside of Final Fantasy, and thought, oh, well, maybe I'll just jump in and just check it out anyway. Maybe I'll take a little bit of a look. Well, the first thing on this video, how to play, what do they call it? Cosmic exploration. Step 1, have played the last 10 years of content. All like that was it. And I was like, I'm out. Or pay extra $25 to to do the skip.
Have they made it so that there's an easy, friendly way to do that?
To play those last 10 years of content?
Yeah.
No. No, you play the last 10 years of content, including like the 20-minute unskippable cutscenes at the end of the expansion, and all that kind of Final Fantasy jazz. That's what they do. Which, man, look at what is going on in this video, in this trailer. So this is the Cosmic Dawn trailer. There's so much weird cartoon anime. There's like a mech, like an anime mech that they're fighting. There's some dude with like an 8-pack who's like disco dancing, and I guess that's a boss that you fight. What is this game? I don't know what this game is even anymore, but like, what is this? What is this?
The barrier is too high. I mean, for me,
yes.
if what you say is true,
like
it's just way too high.
This looks like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse cartoon land.
I'm the person that, like, if you open up a board game, I don't want to read the little folder even.
Right. I don't want to spend 5 minutes to read the dang instructions. So, and all of the cutscenes. I told you all of the cutscenes that are skippable, I skip so hard, and then I play a video on a second screen. When I was trying to catch up on the content, I play a video on the second screen of, here's the 17 hours of Endwalker cutscenes all in one video. And it's like 17 hours. I'll play that on like double speed while I'm just like running around and doing the fetch quests to level up my character and play through the zones.
But don't you still have to nod your way through the cutscenes anyway?
You have to nod your way through the quest turn-ins and those kinds of things. But there are like the big, like at the end of every subchapter, there'll be like a 5-minute just straight up cutscene that you just sit back and fold your arms and watch. And those ones, those you can skip, but it'll be like 5 minutes of content every 3 hours of playtime on like a 40-hour expansion that adds up to hours of just straight up just cutscene. That if you just spacebar through it, you are missing hours of backstory. Yeah, go check those out. It's weird how much there is. Here, what's this mech dude? It's crazy. Anyway, so that's Final Fantasy. They continue to add big content to the game. They continue to, so the developers are continuing to almost apologize for where they're at. They brought back one of the story writers from before. They're continuing to invest in, they want this to evolve. I think Final Fantasy will continue to be one of the top MMOs of all time and continue to be right up there with WoW. Yes, this might be a little bit of a rebuilding period that they're going through, but I have faith with what they've done over the last decade of time that they will continue to be a AAA first class top of the
I
heap
feel like they
MMO.
know their market and they do things that people are going to like, and I think people will find out they do like it.
Yes,
We'll see.
I
But
think they
that's what
will
I
too. So I have no fear that will continue to be a big one and one of the top ones. Another MMO that is one of the top ones, that continues to be one of the top ones, and seems to be in a pretty good place from a player sentiment perspective, is Elder Scrolls Online.
Yep.
This is a game, one of the MMOs that I played a lot of, probably more. This might be third on my list after Star Wars: The Old Republic and World of Warcraft. I played a ton of Elder Scrolls and very much enjoyed it, and probably would enjoy jumping back in. In fact, they've done some things in the last year where they've said this. Maybe this is about 6-8 months ago, where they said, we're going to change the way that we're doing content updates for Elder Scrolls Online. So they used to be very sort of like story chapter focused, and it was a regular cadence, and they were very good at cranking that stuff out. But it got a little stale in terms of, well, now it's just another chapter, and this new chapter has new zone, and the new zone has, the quest, and you go do the quest, and you level up the zone, you go do the zone, and you do the thing. And I think what they felt was, now we've gone through the last 5 years of just doing chapter after chapter and story after story. It's gotten a little stale, that cadence, and rather than us just like doing it again, a zone and a boss and a fractal, or the little mini trial or whatever, they said, we're going to break that a little bit, and we want to break it because we want it to be a little bit more exciting. And so they made this post about this cadence is going to change, and everybody was a little leery on it. I think they've now started to deliver on some of that, and this ESO Direct, that the dev stream that they came out with in May, has made everyone even more excited about this new direction and the answer, the delivery, them delivering on the promises that they made about this new cadence, that I think this MMO is in a really good place. To the point where instead of, again, just a new chapter, they're telegraphing, well, what if instead of just new chapters, we like took one of the update periods and we added a new form of content, like new types of gameplay. And they did. So one of the new ones that they added is something that they call Cyrodiil Champions. So it's PvP, but it's one of those kinds of PvP implementations where you jump into a big battleground, this war, but everybody's like on a level playing field. So everybody has like the same gear, and you like pick your classic character still, but it's not like, you're not jumping in there with people that have been playing for 5 years and have all the best gear and stomp, just raffle stomp you and, one shot you when you get in there. So that's kind of been exciting. Some people have been playing that and really liking it. That seems fun. They've done this thing where they've done a lot of welcome back features and refresh of starting zones. A lot of MMOs have been doing that. WoW has done that over time, right?
WoW continues to reinvent their starting player experience.
Star Wars: The Old Republic is doing that as well. They, in this developer stream, spend a lot of time talking about that. Not a lot of time, but a relatively big segment of 10% of the stream talking about that. What do you think of that kind of update? I think it's important probably for the game, but it bores me as a veteran of any of these MMOs.
What bores you? Hearing about it, or
I feel like
or like if you start a new character, you don't want to go to a new starting experience.
No, some of that's even fine. It's just I wish it's more like Star Wars: The Old Republic. I wish you wouldn't be spending time on new player experience and instead get more veteran player content and spend your time doing that. Do content for me, not for the new players who don't even play the game yet. Which isn't really fair because it does keep the game healthy to have new players coming into the game as well.
Right.
But
I get what you're saying, though. It's sort of like us looking at the producer's letter saying, we don't care about the last quarter because we were there and we know what that was. We want to know about the future, even though that's not what the letter's about.
right. Exactly.
Give us a letter that is about that then.
Right. Yeah, what have you done for me lately? But yeah, I get that it's healthy for the game.
And in the case of WoW and SWTOR both, it does take away some of the friction of playing with a number of alts, and both of those games are about playing alts as well. And as opposed to like Final Fantasy, which has a mechanism so that you don't have to play alts at all.
Right. Right, which is interesting. Now, one thing that they're doing in ESO, where you play your alts, you get a bunch of alts. So this is one of the, again, the new features that they're adding to the game that does sound exciting to me is if you've leveled up a bunch of alts, those classes of those alts, they've added this thing called subclassing. Subclassing allows you to take your main character or any of your characters and grab chunks of the skill tree of your alts, any alts that you've leveled up, and use them and create like a hybrid class.
Yeah, if you can make that work, that's sort of the dream, isn't it?
That sounds cool, doesn't it?
Yeah. Like how many times have you, like I'm running around on this one character and like, why can't I blink? I wish I could blink.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
And
other,
the answer is if you made it so you could blink, then the game would be too hard to balance.
right. However, because they added like the Cyrodiil champions where it has the set characters and the set gear, maybe because they're doing that, they don't have to worry about balance as much.
Yeah.
That's-
I like the idea of introducing ways to not have to care about balance.
Right.
See, that's my thing. I'm kind of bored when they start talking about balance because I don't care. I don't
Exactly.
care if such and such a class has higher numbers than some other class. That doesn't make the game less or more fun for me. I know it does for a lot of people though.
It does, especially for PvP players. If you don't have balance in PvP, then weird
Yeah.
things happen. People feel bad, or everybody has to play the same class, which maybe they don't want to play, or they're not competitive.
Yes.
So when you can break that apart and you can take the PvP and the PvE and separate it such that you can allow weird, unbalanced things to happen in PvE. You can't get too weird because you'll have things like 12-man trials, but we're only going to take this class because it's twice as good as any other class. And then people like get locked out of pugs and stuff like that. That kind of thing can be bad. But less worry about balance. That sounds great.
That what you just described is not the problem of balance. That is the problem of players.
Yes, it is. It is, but it's emergent behavior when you have those extreme imbalances that you'll never be able to.
No,
you're not going to correct player behavior.
It happens. It happens.
That's
with
right. It's
tiny
even
imbalance.
You're right. If it's even like 1/10% better, you're doing 2 extra damage out of 1 million. Players will say, "Well, it's better."
We're not
So,
taking you.
You're dumb if you don't play what's better. You're right. So you're right. Just let the imbalance go and let those players who are going to go do their thing, and they can all play the one best class, whether they like it or not.
And if they want, I know this is, cold, but if you want perfect PvP and balance, then don't play a game that has, gear progression. Go play League of Legends.
Right. Go play Fortnite. That's what it's for.
Yeah, Fortnite.
Overwatch. Even though people will
And
argue about balance in Overwatch.
And I feel like that's not really true. That's like a too easy to be true answer because, people, they like the PvP style of, the tab target global cooldown style of PvP that you get from,
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
that's what they want to play.
Last thing I wanted to mention, because again, it's getting me excited. I think of any of the roadmaps that I've seen of the ones that we're talking about today, ESOs, I think, look the best. So the other thing they talked about is the story that they are going to be putting out. And it's this new storyline. It's called Seasons of the Worm Cult. So the way you start the original ESO story is all about the demons and the anchors and the worm cult trying to bring the demons into the world and that kind of thing. And then they got away from that. And then there's other there's like Dwemer stuff and there's these other things. So they're kind of like going back to, well, what's the worm cult been up to all this time? They start with this tropical island that looks really cool. And it's a new zone that they've not had this kind of zone before with this tropical island. And the Argonians mostly live on this tropical island. But the worm cult is doing stuff. They're breaking this apart into two different parts where you start by getting introduced to the island and the fun and the sun and the beach. Then you play through like the first half of this story on this invasion of the worm cult into this new zone. And then this server-wide event starts happening. So they've broken this apart. And again, this new cadence, this new development approach by them allows them to do things like this, where the whole server is going to have to get together. There's going to be like this big wall that divides the zone in half. And you're playing on the first half of the zone in the first half of this content update. And then the server, everybody has to sort of like get together or contribute to break down this wall in some series of events, some server-wide events and server progression. And when that wall breaks down, it will unlock like the second half of the expansion and the second half of the zone. So that again is them delivering on this promise of this new cadence, allowing them to do new things in new ways and keeping ESO was fresh and having fresh stuff in a way that, as I said, makes me sort of the most excited for their roadmap of all the roadmaps that I've seen so far.
Nice.
I mean, I wouldn't say WoW's roadmap is not exciting. WoW's roadmap is very exciting to me too, because them shortening the time in between the major story expansions in WoW, I do like. I haven't played a lot of WoW, but I do play through all of the story, and I'm excited to see what happens in Midnight, which is coming next. It's going to be coming in the fall.
Well, I mean,
Or in the
since you
winter.
bring it up, you're behind on a lot of story now. So
Yeah.
technically, wait, like I am too. To be ready for Midnight, we need to get in there to WoW and do some story.
But there was no zone. I didn't miss a zone after Goblinville, right?
No, but there's more story.
Yeah.
There's more to the campaign.
Yeah. Some
it takes
of that
place-
kind of story I'm okay in just seeing in YouTube videos though too.
No, but it's part of the campaign. It's not
I know.
about you seeing it. It's like they're going to say, well, you can't start this till you finish this campaign.
Oh boy.
Well, I don't know that for sure, but
Yeah. Well then, yeah. Don't Final Fantasy me, bro. But I'm okay with that. I can catch up on some of that.
I mean,
real
I
quick.
know parts of the campaign you can't do without doing previous campaign, but I'm sure Midnight they'll let people play without.
Yeah. The here's the zone where the ethereals live. That's what I'm more excited about. Let me go there. As long as I can get there and if I have to do some catching up, I'll do some catching up, because catching up in WoW is not like catching up in Final Fantasy.
No, it really isn't.
Yeah, so I'm okay with that. But ESO, that might be one that I go back and jump into and play too, because I always do play WoW when that comes back, and I've been out of ESO for a long time now, and I've got some nice houses in ESO. I've got some nice mounts, and some of this new stuff is exciting, and the subclassing is exciting because I had a couple really good alts too. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe that's fun. And then Star Wars: The Old Republic. Can't wait for our new story to be able to catch up.
Yeah.
Okay, I had one more on the list for today, but I think we're going to put it off because it's kind of on the edge. It's kind of like a new up-and-comer. It's New World. But I think it's in a much better place than, again, the zeitgeist is New World is dying or New World is dead, and it's not. Tons and tons of people play New World. I think New World is really, really good. I think we will save New World, though, to talk about sort of like the next group. And it's probably the top of the next group of either up and coming or older ones that are still persisting, sort of like in that next tier of MMOs.
And also how New World is different too from all the ones we talk about today, except for Guild Wars 2, is it's its own IP. It didn't come from existing RPGs.
Right. we will talk about probably a couple other ones that are definitely old IP, Star Trek and Lord of the Rings, that are lingering. And I think those two we'll talk about, I think are mostly supported by the IP. So that's a contrast. So that'll be fun to contrast those two. New IP versus sort of like new MMO supporting some emerging lore versus IP that's carrying old MMOs for those other two.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that.
Yeah.
All right. But I think that is enough for today. We don't need to go on and on. We don't need to make 2-hour shows. But this has been really fun.
Yeah, it has been.
So to keep up and to see part 2 of this, maybe next week, unless we will do, if we make this like a 3 or 4 episode series, we'll probably, like, if we go through the end of July, we'll probably play Grounded in between, and we'll talk about an episode. We'll talk about Grounded. But next week, we'll probably be talking about this again. So stay tuned. All the feed and subscribe links to Stay Tuned are on newoverlords.com. Our video is up on YouTube/newoverlords. Please come chat with us on our Discord, newoverlords.com/Discord. You can also follow on all the social networks, and we will keep you up to date there as well. And with that, we will talk to you soon.
Later, everyone.